Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network, the only podcast to take you through the back catalogue of A24, review the latest releases, and bring you interviews with the cast and crew behind the movies. As we dive into A24 and Apple's newest film, Sharper. I'm your co-host Alice King, and with me as always is Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. Yeah, it feels like it's been a little while since we've talked about one of the Apple A24 joints.
After the buzz and the slight misdirection, perhaps similar to this film, of that A24 Apple merger that was on the cards for about 2 days or something on Twitter, perhaps. So before we dive into the film, quick update on the A24 Hour news this week as we enter the end game in the Oscars race. This last week saw the DGA, Directors Guild Awards, with wins for The Daniels in Best Fiction Feature and Charlotte Wells for Best First Feature, and then Charlotte Wells picking up the equivalent award at the BAFTAs just yesterday here in London. So, Lee, how are you feeling about A24's chances going into the big one? As they vie for their potential first Best Picture win since the infamous Moonlight debacle.
It's one of those ones I tend to trust people like yourself a bit more than my own feeling when it comes to the Oscar races, etc. About, I saw some people saying the other day that, because of the Daniel success, that means that they're guaranteed for the kind of next phase in terms of the Oscars. I mean, I don't know why that one maybe means more than perhaps the BAFTAs, etc. It's so hard for me to feel these things out, but it's one of those ones. I'm pleased that they've got some recognition, but ultimately I was really just over the moon yesterday for sort of Charlotte Wells' success, and sort of seeing some representation for After Sun at kind of the British Awards and so on. For better or worse, the BAFTAs over the years have tended to try and predict what the Oscars are going to do, and sometimes that means films like After Sun that deserve some recognition by a home audience often get overlooked. So I was really pleased to see that Charlotte Wells won, and I think it kind of wasn't too surprising, which was quite nice, I think.
I think that one was pretty much the one sort of, well, not lock of the night, but I think that was the one that most people expected After Sun to triumph in. And, I appreciate your, support in saying that you trust me when it comes to these things. However, if you were to look at my predictions versus the actual results of the BAFTAs last night, you would have seen that I did not do very well at all. Because, it went against the grain of what we were expecting so far. Ki Hu Kwan, I think, lost his first award of the race to Barry Keoghan for Banshees of Inisherin, and then it was looking like, Banshees of Inisherin was doing very well. So, Colin Farrell's going to win Best Actor. No, it went to Austin Butler. And then, despite, probably should have actually taken more than just a pinch of salt in the fact that Quiet on the Western Front had 14 BAFTA nominations and led the field, and then it ended up winning most of the major awards as well. How that filters in, is it going to affect the likes of Everything Everywhere All at Once going to be winning the Best Picture Oscar? Who knows? That preferential ballot always gets me, but if anything, I think Daniels, is their best chance. Probably is Best Director. As in, sometimes Best Director is also known as the Most Directing Award, and I think that yes, Everything Everywhere All at Once definitely probably has the most direction, and also probably the best direction of the year as well. But yes, no, all hail After Sun. We've been banging on about it, and Charlotte Wells, previous A24 project guest, now BAFTA winner. See what happens. You see what happens when you come on the show. So, will there be similar success for today's film? I guess we'll have to find out, but potentially not. So, today's film is Sharper, directed by Benjamin Caron and written by Brian Greenwood and Alessandro Tanaka. It stars Sebastian Stan, Julianne Moore, Justice Smith, Brianna Middleton, and John Lithgow. So, no one is who they seem in Sharper, a neo-noir thriller of secrets and lies set amongst New York City's bedrooms, barrooms, and boardrooms. Characters compete for riches and power in a high-stakes game of ambition, greed, lust, and jealousy that will keep audiences guessing until the final moment. The tagline itself says, "Read between the lies." So, Lee, were you looking forward to this film? First impressions, because I mean, I'm guessing you potentially couldn't have got too hyped up for it because this film did kind of almost drop out of nowhere. I mean, we only found out about it probably about a month ago when the first trailer dropped on the internet.
Yeah, I think I remember you maybe bringing it up in an A24 Hour News way back when, but
there's so many A24 films, I've even forgotten how many they're up to at the moment.
yeah, I was kind of looking forward to this one because I think it's like one of these sorts of first out of the gate of this year. I mean, in 24 hours time, I'm going to go see Close, and yeah, it was one of those ones. Okay, let's start the 2023 A24 kind of filmography, and yeah, I was kind of looking forward to it. The the A24 and Apple TV Plus output has been a little bit mixed for me. There's, apart from kind of Boys State, none of them have really like blown me away. There's been things like I've admired, perhaps something like Macbeth, or the Elephant Queen or King or whatever it was called, or I was kind of like, okay, sure, that was something, that was a piece of content. So I was kind of looking forward to this one. I somehow kind of dodged most of the trailers, but I kind of had seen some sort of little kind of promo videos just kind of popping up here and there, and it looked stylish. It had quite a good cast. I liked the idea of like kind of someone swindling the Manhattan elite, which was all I knew, and I was kind of like,
okay, Bane, calm down.
Yeah, when I sat down to kind of watch it on a sort of Sunday afternoon, the feelings I had at the end of the film kind of weren't the greatest, but I feel that this film has a role to play, and I'm definitely curious to talk about that with you.
Everyone has a role to play in this one, it could be said. For me, it was, I like a heist movie or a con movie. I enjoy that sort of journey where you're never really sure what to expect, and there's always going to be a sting in the tail. Also, this was, Julianne Moore now at 3 A24 films. 2 in just the last couple of weeks, almost. With When You Finish Saving the World, she's after those young guns like Riley Keough and Elle Fanning. She wants the top spot. Is this as good as her book Turn and Gloria Bell? Potentially not, but like you say, there is a lot to discuss. I mean, I think one place to start is probably with the storytelling device, I think, which is where the story advances in sort of chapters, perhaps, where each chapter is told from a certain character's perspective. So at the beginning, we're introduced to the character of Tom, played by Justice Smith, who is a young man who works in a New York bookstore. He's the manager there, and his world is turned upside down when a young woman walks in looking for a particular book to help with her PhD studies in attraction forms, and it's safe to say that the relationship probably does not turn out as he had planned. Then when you see the next chapter from her perspective, the character of Sandra, and then we introduce the characters of Matt, Marianne, and what did you make of that particular storytelling device where each chapter reveals a little bit more about each character and their motivations?
It's one of those ones where at the beginning you kind of start watching these kind of vignettes and you're kind of like, okay, there's almost a bit by the time you get to sort of the end of sort of Tom, and you kind of go, okay, right, there's this kind of Sandra character, she's kind of like a bit of a fraudster, a trickster, and then you sort of start to get to kind of the end of this Sandra one, and I feel like this is a kind of genre by even that point. It's like, okay, what's going to be the trick within the trick? You see it with, whether it's something kind of like those Now You See Me, whatever that little duo films that came out.
Now You See Me and Now You See Me 2, which should have been called Now You Don't, but no, never mind. That's something I'm still not over.
You watch these films and there's definitely always like, you're conditioned to go, okay, there's the con, but what's the bigger con going on? And immediately by the end of sort of the second one, I'm like, okay, what's really going on here? That it's not taking it as kind of a linear kind of narrative on, taking everything at face value with the characters that perhaps we shouldn't, people, the ones that are getting swindled, of course it's going to kind of not pay off, but it's going to pay off for them at the end, as opposed to kind of our anti-heroes and our sort of criminal characters. And just immediately by the end of that sort of second vignette, I'm like, I'm not watching the film, I'm just expecting the twist to come along, and I know what that twist's going to be. And I just sort of felt like, yeah, it's trying to throw me off, but it sort of failed. And I don't think that's on necessarily me as an audience member, but I feel like the film wasn't doing anything particularly new, and it didn't feel like it's as smart as it thinks it is.
It's kind of like the experience of watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie where, after watching two or three of his movies that have big twists, you're now almost conditioned to, when you're watching a movie, you are, well, what's the twist going to be? And you start overanalyzing every single thing in the movie to try and figure out what the twist is. And, I guess you're looking for the donut hole in the donut hole, to paraphrase Benoit Blanc in this.
And sometimes that can be fun, like, take Knives Out or whatever. That's quite fun. You go, okay, there's going to be a twist, but okay, I'm maybe not sure where it's going to go. Like, murder mysteries can work really well because, like, even though there's a mystery, there's a twist to come, it's perhaps not as kind of always traditional. It can be a bit more out there. Was this? It was like, it's pretty obvious where it's going to go at some point or another, because like this specific genre has kind of been done to death, whereas the murder mystery, you can have something like a Knives Out, you can have that, you can
have Bodies, 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 the A24 one, which, it has a twist. It has an absolutely stupid, ridiculous twist, but it makes sense within the story, even though I don't think anyone would have guessed it going in. You just think that these are awful people and they hate each other and that's why they're doing it. But the fact that it's all spurred by one moment of absolute stupidity by a character is amazing, but it fits within the story. With this one, I think, the issue is that once you kind of understand how all the characters are connected, which I think is around about by the start of Max's story, like you said, you can then see where it's going to go. And there's a line where this basically Max is training up Sandra to be a fraudster, and he sort of says you never feel sorry for the mark. You can't get emotionally attached to it. You never feel sorry for them. Yet I had that problem as an audience member, in the fact that, I do not feel sorry for anyone, because a lot of them make incredibly stupid decisions. And I think it wasn't on this podcast, it was on Filibuster, where we reviewed the Tinder Swindler, where you're sitting there watching it and going, how could anyone be so stupid? Obviously, thankfully, I've never been in that position in real life, but I would like to think that I would have the wherewithal to, ask a few more questions, because I don't think it's spoilers to say, because, it's in the first chapter of the film that Tom is, going out with Sandra, and it's, she's talking about how this, this mysterious brother figure that she's got, and he's got gambling debts, and she needs to pay them off, but it's $350,000, and he says, I have $350,000 you can borrow, it's fine, I'll give you the money. And she's like, well, don't be stupid, you don't have that kind of money. He's like, yes, I do. I'll get it in cash, it's fine. And then he's like, I'll come along with you. And she's like, oh no, I don't want you anywhere near these people. I'll go do it alone and I'll come back, I promise. And then, what a surprise, she doesn't come back, and then he's left feeling really stupid. And it's like, well, you're absolutely dumb. I mean, she must have been absolutely unbelievable in the sack for him to agree to do that after, 2 weeks of that, or he's just never had a girlfriend before, I don't know. But, I mean, it was difficult to feel sorry for him, and then everyone else, because they all make stupid decisions. These apparent seasoned professionals, I'm questioning everything as an audience member, why they weren't questioning everything, particularly in the final act. That all felt too easy, and it was like, no, surely if you've been conning someone, you should expecting to be conned in return. Never trust anyone, and yeah, that's why it ultimately didn't work for me, is because I had no empathy or sympathy for any of the characters, and therefore it was difficult to engage with them. But then also it was just like scoffing at the stupidity of, yeah, I know, I think I know where this is going, and oh yes, it did. So why didn't they think that they were going to get double crossed or triple crossed or quadruple crossed at any particular moment in time?
Dare we say, can we maybe go into slight spoilers at this point, do you think?
I mean, it's just out on Apple TV, but yes, we can. We're going to throw up the spoiler alert. So if you have not watched Sharper yet, it was in American cinemas very, very briefly, but is now available on Apple TV Plus. So if you have not watched it, press pause, giving you time to go watch it. You're back. Okay. So this is spoilers about the final section. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but following Tom giving Sandra the money, it was revealed that Sandra was groomed and schooled by Max to take part in this con, only for her to be double-crossed by him, who took the money and then went off. But then, flashbacking slightly earlier, it's revealed that his partner and lover is engaged to John Lithgow's character, who happens to be Tom's father, and Max inserts himself into the family only with the idea of getting paid off. He does that, but then Marianne decides to stay with John Lithgow, get married to him to inherit his fortune when he dies, because he's not very well. He's pissed off about this, so then sets up the scam with Sandra on Tom, and then at the end, Tom and Sandra basically team up to swindle Marianne out of her inheritance by pretending that Tom is killed in a gunfight. And yes, I think that's pretty much where we're at. If that sounds convoluted, that's because it potentially is. But did you see that coming? Maybe not the way it played out, but the double, triple cross, quadruple cross.
Yeah, pretty much. It was everything, like, in that moment felt so fake, where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to immediately transfer the money to the trust fund. It's all good. It's all good. And everyone just didn't act kind of normal in that kind of moment. It just all felt so kind of staged.
Oh, he's dead. Is he? Are you sure you don't want to check a little bit harder?
Yeah, and I'm going to immediately do this very specific thing. And yeah, it was just watching it, just going like, and when they got on the plane and she starts kind of looking at the, the blood, oh, it's actually just jam. And it's like, oh, yeah.
Or corn syrup, potentially corn syrup that was used as pig's blood and carry. So
God, the kind of poor lamb that we thought was on drugs and stuff, actually she's turned it all around and she's not actually in the toilet thing. And it was just, you were just kind of watching it, just going, this film, I bet that the people involved think, oh, this is a smart thriller, it's going to keep people guessing, people are going to have such a good time watching this at home. But it's one of those ones. It's as I mentioned earlier. It's not as smart as it thinks it is. It's inherently a very stupid film, and there's nothing remotely original that it brings to the kind of the con world or game and so on. And yeah, it was just a kind of huge kind of real disappointment. And yeah, I just the ending and how it unfolded just was like, yep, that's exactly how it went. Even at the end, they're thinking it's all so smart. Oh, he's dead. But actually, because I've transferred it to the trust fund and he's dead, it's going to come back to me anyway. And you just sort of just kind of roll your eyes and just go, yeah, you've made me work to this whole point over sort of nearly 2 hours, and you've come up completely short. You've kind of botched the landing big time.
Yeah, it was a very disappointing, because the two of them, Sebastian Stan and Julia Moore, seemed smarter, that they should have sort of questioned something was going on before they actually did. And that's what annoyed me. And I think you're absolutely right in that films like this, like a con movie or like an Ocean's 11 or a murder mystery, they live or die by the ending. It's like, the reveal, almost like the prestige or whatever. It's like, if you don't nail the reveal and have a satisfying conclusion, not to the point where you are purposefully like, ha ha ha, look, we really tricked you, aren't we smart? But just even just a satisfying reveal and denouement to the action, and that's where this one sort of fell down. If it had delivered an ending that I hadn't been expecting, or even that I had been expecting but had done it in an interesting and imaginative way, I probably would have been more forgiving. But for me, a movie like this lives or dies by the ending, and yeah, the ending let it down, I feel, greatly.
The one thing I want to say in defense of this film, and it is a very low...
Please do. We like to find positives even if we have negatives.
I mean, the whole thing doesn't even have anything to do with the film, but it was like... I don't know if... Did you see... There was an article that came out on Sunday from Variety that was like, could mediocre movies save movie theaters? So it was talking about things like 80 for Brady, A Man Called Otto, and Ticket to Paradise. And, when I was watching Sharper, the main takeaway I had from this, obviously it's on an Apple TV and it's in select screens, around the country. I think it's just showing in the Everyman cinema here in Edinburgh in particular. But I was watching this film thinking... There would have been a time that a film like this would have been the counter-programming film in cinemas to what we've got Ant-Man and Quantumania out just now. And you would have gone to watch a film like this and it would have been perfectly kind of fine.
Perfectly acceptable Friday night entertainment.
Yeah, and it would have made a little bit of money. And what you say is perfect. I saw a reaction to that Variety article that made me think of, well, this is Sharper. And it was like that Roger Ebert kind of once said that people don't want to see good movies or bad movies. They just want to see something that they can get into and get out of. And that's what Sharper is. Like, Sharper is for mainstream audiences. Like, this should be in cinemas, and it should have been a more regular thing seeing a film like this in amongst your Ant-Mans and your various other films in kind of probably in the 90s, maybe the early 2000s. This would have done really quite well at the cinema. I truly believe that. It's good quality or not, this would have done well, but it didn't. It's just a film that's now on Apple TV. Looking at the film, it's got a decent budget on it as well, but it's just going to be something that's going to be forgotten about. People do tend to talk about some of those Apple TV shows, but really is the topic around the films. I mean, remember was it the Cherry one or something like that came along, how everyone forgot about that. And yeah, I just feel Sharper would have been a bigger success in another time. Even if it's a mediocre film, it would have done well. And I would like to see more Sharpers in the cinema, and yeah, I would have gone to see it in the cinema. Instead, I had to make do with watching it on my TV.
Yeah, I mean, in Apple's defense, unlike Netflix, their films are incredibly easy to find when you turn on Apple TV. I mean, Sharper was right there, slapdash on the home menu when I logged in. It was like, this is our new film, you should watch it. So, you don't have to go searching for these films. So there is that. But no, I absolutely agree that this is a film which, if it had been released in cinemas, it probably would have made a bit of money. I mean, what are we talking about in terms of budget? But it's the I don't know if you've seen the Matt Damon episode of Hot Wings.
Yeah, God, you're so right. DVD,
yeah, where he's talking about the DVD market and the fact that movies, these mid-range movies which are like $20 to $80 million and whatever, they would do okay at the cinema, but their real shelf life was people buying it on DVD and Blu-ray, and that's where they turn a profit and stuff. And then those are the ones, they then turn that money back into making more of these movies, where at the moment, we are in a situation where it is basically, it's Marvel movies, it's Avatars and stuff. Those are the ones which are dominating the box office, and it's very difficult for any other movie to really get a foothold. I mean, you do have the Oscar nominees at the moment, but certainly where I am at the moment, the multiplexes are showing them at split shows or even sort of like one showing a day, for like a week and a half, and then they're gone. It's like everyone is doubling down on the big budget movies, whereas people want to do go out and see different types of films, but they're just not given the opportunity. And it's they're if something like this was made for like 30-40 million dollars, it's fairly low risk if if the physical media market was still there. But you've got to count on PVOD and the arrangements that you've got on something that streams on Netflix and Apple TV is entirely different now. So it's a very difficult market to work out, and you've obviously got the genre proof of horror, which is guaranteed to make money. People still go out for horror movies. It can be made for like 10-12 million. Was it Megan was made for what, 12 million? It was already at $40 million after one weekend, probably going to break 100. Although it turns out, I think you were right on this one, that I thought they were going to double dip in the cinema, but it turns out they're just going for the unrated version. You could not see in cinemas on Blu-ray and DVD with that one as well. So, but I mean, even comedies these days you don't get they aren't really the sort of box office hits that they used to be. And it's an awkward thing because, I guess a lot of the A24 films are in that sort of difficult mid-range category where every now and again you will get a breakout hit. Their biggest movie is made like $100 million worldwide at the box office with Everything Everywhere All at Once. However, the amount of money that they put in or buy them for is relatively small, so they can afford to take risks and stuff like that. It's just finding the right way to market them and get them into cinemas, and whether it's the small release of New York and LA, build word of mouth and grow it out from there, rather than the blanket launch and then start to reduce screens when you figure out that it's not going so well. So it is a difficult one, but A24, as we've said before, they've got great films, they've got terrible films, they've got good films, they've got decent films, they've got okay films. So they aren't afraid to take risks and stuff like that. And apart from, say, like the upcoming Friday the 13th TV series that they're doing, it is, pretty much all original content as well. They are championing original filmmakers and original stories. So, we do have to commend them for that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm still baffled slightly by the logistics of this Apple TV Plus and A24 deal. I don't think I've ever kind of got to the bottom of how it's all working and what films they're necessarily kind of opening up. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a weird one, and I think I'd love to get to the bottom of the actual decision making behind it.
Yeah, is it ones that they just think we're not going to be able to get an effective cinematic theatrical distribution on this, or do Apple TV get like a first dibs look and sort of go, you can have 5 films this year, okay, we'll pick these 5 or something? Who knows? If anyone from Apple A24 wants to come on and tell us exactly how you do it, we're all ears. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one, but it seems to be working for them. But like you say, I think, yeah, it's like Apple. If you think of Apple, it is the TV shows at the moment which are, winning for them, with sort of Severance and Ted Lasso and stuff like that. There hasn't, I don't think, really been a breakout crossover hit on the movie side yet.
No, but yeah, well, it is what it is. Like, this was a film.
The Irishman. It is what it is.
Exactly.
Indeed. So, I mean, as we bring this episode to a close, I guess it only leaves me to say that our next episode will be close. The Oscar-nominated Belgian film, which I've already seen and was very impressed with. Actually, given the game away there, not how I feel about that one. But Lee is going to be seeing that one tomorrow on an advanced preview. So we'll be back next week to talk about that one. And then I think that is actually us all caught up until we get firm release dates on the next set of A24s.
We'll have Beef soon, I guess, on Netflix. Beef on Netflix, I think, will be our next one.
I guess, yes. We'll be doing a A24 TV series, first one for a while. But if there is something to look forward to, it's probably the film which my phone has been pinging away with notifications ever since we started recording, which is basically the first reactions coming out of Berlinale for Past Lives. So technically the second reactions, because it also got amazing first reactions out of the Sundance Film Festival. So I guess we'll have to wait and see when this one is going to get a release date. But it sounds like the new A24 film that everyone's going to obsess over for the next year, Past Lives, is coming soon. But until then...
Heard it here first,
or second, or third. Who knows? But anyway, we'll catch you next week with Close. But until then, take care, and we'll speak to you soon.